everyone, and welcome once again to the vast and ominous comic book vault. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And it's time once again for new acquisitions. Dan, are you ready for lots more comic reviewing?
Yeah, it looks like a pretty good week this week, too. I was kind of surprised to see how many quality things, actually, that I really like came out this week.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a neat set for us, because we usually just seem to review Marvel together, and then more Marvel. Yeah. And then a little more Marvel. And today, we've got some DC for you, as well as Marvel. So Dan and I are going to review 5 books for you, and then we each have a couple of solo books to do at the end. And thanks, as always, to Elite Comics out here in Overland Park, Kansas, for all their help with the show. Let's start off right now with some DC, Dan, with Batman number 22. This is the second issue of 0 Year, and we finally get to talk about the big cool reveal from the last issue, which we didn't get to spoil on last show, and that is the Riddler is the big villain in this arc, and we were hoping for this. There had been some discussion while the previous arc was going on that the Riddler was going to be in the next arc, but then when it was announced that it was 0 Year, I was like, oh no, it won't be the Riddler, especially when they announced the Riddler as being in the villain month thing.
Yeah, that's what we had thought that was the extent of the Riddler we were going to get.
But it's not!
Here, baby. Dan, I'm going to love every second of it.
Dan, what do you think of Edward Nygma and Bruce Wayne meeting before he's Batman, and for him to be really, as far as we can tell, the first big Batman villain that Bruce Wayne ever meets, though he's not aware of it? Do you think that's cool? Does that work?
I think that's really cool, actually, because out of all of the major Batman rogues, if you think about it, from the previous continuity, the Riddler was the one that was least connected to Bruce Wayne personally. I like that we have a precedent set for the antagonistic intellectual battle that they're going to have later on, where Edward Nygma doesn't know how to respond to Bruce because Bruce responds to him on the same level intellectually, and he believes himself to be so above everyone. And you can sort of see how it would be that way if everyone besides Bruce Wayne can't keep up with him, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I also like the idea of Bruce learning to be a detective before he puts on the Batman suit, and that's the guy he's going to have to go up against first. That makes perfect sense. It's also really neat that I just thought of this, that the backup feature in this, they keep doing these backups that are about, if you're not reading this, that are about Bruce Wayne's travels before he starts operating again in Gotham, even well before he puts on the Batsuit, where he's doing all that training, and he's learning in this with this guy in Egypt about how to get out of scrapes by using your imagination, and I think it's really cool that it's kind of a neat parallel with him and the Riddler, that that part of his training was thinking outside the box and all of that, and being inventive and coming up with something that nobody else has ever come up with before. So I've never seen this where we've got actually a real concrete case for similarities, at least in intellect, between Batman and the Riddler. And dare I say, already 2 issues in, this might end up, depending on where he goes with it, this is early to say this might end up being the Riddler story everybody ends up remembering, because Riddler doesn't have a lot of material that anybody, talks about.
No, not at all. Not in the comics, at least. I know everybody remembers him for Gorshin, obviously, in the 60s show, and people know Carey's forever portrayal. But I don't think I've ever read a Riddler story in the comics that's really caught my interest, and I don't even know if I've even read a full-on Riddler story in the comics, to be honest.
He doesn't have that really definitive... Yeah, I mean, he's had some cool things to do here and there, but he doesn't have his own definitive thing. So, what if this ends up being the definitive Riddler story, at least for a while?
That would be fantastic. And one of the things I wanted to mention about that conversation you were speaking about, where they meet for the first time, too, is the way that Capullo uses that Egyptian symbol on the wall that Riddler's talking about as a way to lay out the panels and tell the story. That was really interesting. And at first glance, I was like, man, this is going to be hard to follow. And then I was able to follow the whole thing and get the full extent of the conversation and everything. I thought it was really innovative, really inventive. Similar to what the things they did in, it wasn't like a whole issue thing, like issue 5 was, where you had to turn the book around and you were getting lost like Batman was, but I love that Capullo is thinking outside the box and doing different things with the artwork.
Well, that's a great point. Yeah, that the issue itself is doing some of the things that it's talking about, just like he was doing with the Maze thing. And I was thinking about the Maze issue also while I was reading that and thinking, wow, Capullo has been really inventive in this series with how he's been laying out panels, and he doesn't go crazy. It's traditional most of the time, but every now and again he'll surprise you and he'll try something, and it always works so far. Another thing that was really cool about that hieroglyph thing is the idea with something like that seems to be that you have clues that you follow, and each one when you would it's like a puzzle game, right? Where you would solve one and then you get to the next place. You'd solve one, you get to the next place. Conversations are somewhat that way, where a conversation, depending on what an answer will be to a question or how someone will respond to an idea, a conversation will go in a different place, and so it's kind of paralleling clues with how some conversations work, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and you get the feeling that every conversation between these two men is going to be exactly as you described. And that's why I think the visual works so well, because that's how these two men think. They're so analytical and so meticulous about hanging on everybody's words and analyzing them, that sort of thing. So yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was great.
How long did that have to take Snyder to write?
Oh, probably while. I wonder whose idea it was to do that sort of thing first, Capullo or Snyder, because that's built into the story too. That symbol, it talks about it's a snake that eats itself and regrows that way and things like that. So I'd be interested to know. But one of the other conversations I was really into in the issue, and I think you had talked a little bit about it before we had started recording, was the conversation between Bruce and Alfred.
Oh yeah,
which I thought was great.
Bruce and Alfred are not on the same page in this story yet, and it's really kind of fun to see them in that place because Alfred. It's neat that Alfred is not upset with Bruce for going on this quest. For wanting to be the vigilante. It's almost as if Alfred is upset that he hasn't come up with Batman yet. It's not about strategy, it's about his family's legacy, and it reminds me a lot of some of the things that Alfred was saying to him in Batman Begins. There have been a lot of Begins parallels here, and it's not the same thing, but he says at the birthday party in Batman Begins, it's not just about your legacy, it's about your father's legacy, and you're tarnishing it. And here we've got a Bruce that is refusing to let people know that he's even still alive. He's being a ghost, and that's not okay with Alfred. He wants Bruce to carry on his family's legacy because, remember, his father was a really good person and he was a symbol of hope, just like Batman will eventually be a symbol of hope. And so I think it's really cool that that's the direction he went with that. And it's kind of echoing some of those Begins things, but doing it in a totally different way with the faking his own death thing. And I don't want to give away where the faking his own death thing goes in this, but it caught me by surprise, and I was so impressed with how that was handled.
Me too. One of the other things I liked about the Alfred conversation too was I love that this version of Alfred, and I don't know if this is a new thing, but he has this line where he says, "I've fought wars less noble than this." I like that Alfred has skeletons in his closet. That's really interesting. They've done some backups with like Alfred's family, I remember in the Court of Owls, and seeing how the Pennyworth family is almost just as troubled as the Wayne one is, and I like that that sort of connects those two characters in a way where they both have these dark pasts and they're trying to come to terms with them almost at the same time, and that's what's thrown them into conflict. I like that about it.
And I don't think, just practically, I don't think Alfred can be just a generic butler and understand why Bruce does what he does.
Right, yeah. I'm not sure if his They didn't really say if he has a specific military background or anything like that, but I know in like the new Batman TV show, he's like an ex-MI6 agent. I don't know if that's a new thing or not.
I don't think it is. I think that's been done to varying degrees. The idea of Alfred being in a war, and remember that Alfred being in war. I don't know specifically what military, but I think British. But Alfred being in at least a war is in Dark Knight. You know, we're told,
that's true, and it was in
that.
Earth 1 too, the Jeff Johns book. But I liked that about it quite a bit. I wouldn't mind if we were spending a whole year with this character and doing the origin. I wouldn't mind seeing some more of Alfred's background and things like that.
Absolutely not.
That would be really cool. I also like that Snyder's setting and seeding little things like the Robin symbol, like that's been popping up in little places in this issue as well as the previous one, where we're going to see an origin for where that comes from. That's really cool.
We meet Vicky Vale for the first time.
Yeah, yes, we do. That was really cool. A brief little cameo appearance by her. Yeah, this mystery is getting really intriguing to me because you have a guy like the Riddler telling Bruce all of the things he seemingly needs to know to figure out what's going on, and you know the Riddler's not that guy. So it just seems to be bigger than Bruce realizes, and I have no idea where it's going. Snyder's doing a really good job with defying my expectations in that regard. I think it's good stuff.
It's incredibly involved, and this could have, we've said this before, this could have been really boring, especially being Bruce Wayne out of costume for a whole bunch of issues. This could have been really boring, but I mean, like, it's so involved. I mean, I don't know where the Red Hood gang is going. We've got a thing with the Penguin at the beginning of this, and there's all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah, very true, and I get the feeling that that Red Hood guy is somebody we know.
I'm getting that vibe myself. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's too many shots in this issue of him putting the mask on and we don't get to see his face, you know what I mean? That's another ongoing mystery I think that will get see solved by the end. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where all this stuff goes. Who knows, maybe they'll do the classic Joker origin again where that's who it is and he falls in the vat of acid. Who knows?
Yeah, I kind of doubt it. Because we've seen a flashback with the Joker Red Hood, and he wasn't a leader of a whole bunch of Red Hood guys, I don't think. And I think the costume was different, but I'm not sure.
I remember he had the big pill Red Hood mask on, but I don't know about the
maybe I'm wrong and the costume was the same. I kind of want to go back now and look at that. But yeah, in Death of the Family, I think we had a little bit of a flashback.
Yeah, you're right, we did.
To that.
And I remember
he's got to be connecting those
in his
things.
Own costume, and it was that costume. I remember now, because remember it breaks and Batman can see that it's her.
Yeah, no, I remember that. I thought it had a different cape or something, but I could be totally wrong. Because
anyway.
I thought his had a cape, and this guy doesn't have a cape. This guy's just wearing a suit.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, true. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Let's go ahead and move right along, shall we? To Superman Unchained #2. Also, of course, Scott Snyder, and with art by Jim Lee. I complained a little bit about Jim Lee's art last time. This time, I loved it. I loved every panel of this issue. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I don't know what changed for me, but I thought this issue looked a lot better, or maybe I just fell into it and I'm getting what he's doing with this stylistically now. Once again, talk about involved. There's a whole lot going on here. What did you think of this issue, Dan?
I liked it. There were a few panels for me, ironically, where Lee's art did fall a little bit short for me.
Really?
I got a little bit of the thing where you were talking about, where it just didn't look as detailed.
Yeah, well, maybe I just got used to it.
There were a few panels where, like, specifically this page right here, where Superman just doesn't have any detail on his face at all.
Yeah.
And here, it's not very detailed at all. So I was missing out a little bit, but otherwise the book looks pretty good. I liked the opening scene here where we have Snyder demonstrating that even though Superman has these powers and he can feasibly do anything, using those powers in a way that would be effective is still a difficult thing to do.
Yes. He's got this great place where he's got to try to catch a building. But if he just catches it, like a big skyscraper, but if he just catches it, it'll break in half and everybody will die. So what do? Yeah, those are the kinds of situations that I love to see Superman in.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you identify with the character quite a bit, and I like that Snyder has him again relating things that he's doing back to, like, things that he would do back in Smallville. Like, he's like, oh, I remember I learned this in Mr. whatever, I think it was Swan. They named the professor after Kurt Swan, in his history class. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. It makes him, hometown Superman. Because I've been sort of missing that. He's been a little alien in the New 52 for my taste.
Yeah,
not
me too.
Enough of, nice guy Clark Kent from Kansas. But I like that Snyder's going back to a little bit more of the traditional Superman characterization, at least. That's very cool to see.
So we've got this kind of this kind of involved plot with a group, as far as I can figure, this kind of terrorist group that's kind of anti-technology, and they're trying to destroy technology, and that's a difficult situation. That's a difficult thing for Superman to stop, because it's not something you can just go use your brawn and stop.
Right. I like that the threat of this book at large seems to be Superman combating a negative reaction to him by the world. And that's not something he can fight with his brawn. You're exactly right. Like, the two main antagonists of this issue seem to be the Ascension, that terrorist group, and the U.S. military that's building black hole weapons to combat Superman in case he ever goes bad. And same thing with Batman, too. Batman's even building tech in case Superman goes bad. And there's this whole conversation between Bruce and Batman about that, which was really interesting. That escalation is very cool to see. It touches on, some of the Cold War themes that have been present in Superman since, though that whole thing was going on when he's created. So I thought that was very cool.
And Batman and Superman, I like how they're... first of all, I like that Batman's in this, because, of course, we know Snyder can write that guy. And I like seeing Batman and Superman's uneasy relationship immediately encapsulated in that scene from the very get-go. Yeah. Superman shows up, and Batman immediately uses that opportunity to test technology that he's been developing to combat Superman in case anything ever goes wrong. And at the end of the scene, I'll let you read it for yourself to see what the technology is, but at the end of the scene, Superman's like, now that you said you were developing that before we were friends and before we got along and you knew what I was, now that you know that I'm not a crazy person, are you gonna shut this technology? And Batman says, yeah, sure, I'm not gonna keep developing that. No, of course not.
Anytime now. I thought that was really funny.
That was a great scene. I want to see Snyder write some Batman Superman.
Yeah, I love that Batman has like a really kind of deadpan, dry sense of humor there.
He really does.
Because it's like, it's difficult to make Batman funny, I think, but Snyder is one of the best people at writing Batman dialogue, I think. And he makes him funny here. I liked that quite a bit. I'm going to be honest with you, I had no idea what was going on with the cliffhanger at the end.
I was
like, you did?
No, I didn't either. I'm done.
I wasn't sure if I was supposed to or not, because I see two people that look exactly the same, and I thought there was only one of them, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. Yeah, I don't know what that means. I have no idea. Also, what's going on with this? Like, is it a clone of Superman? What is this guy? There's this...
I don't know.
Do we just not know yet? There's this being that works kind of like Superman. He's powered by the sun, but he's apparently more powerful than Superman, and I think that's kind of part of why the military is going nuts.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they're making him a pawn of the U.S. military. That's sort of interesting, because that's what... people accuse Superman of all the time, and that's what he is in Dark Knight Returns. He's just a pawn of the government, and I like that we're seeing, the real Superman, the character that the version of Superman that I would like to think is, the definitive version of Superman. He wouldn't be a pawn of the government if they're doing bad things.
No, you're right, and that's also what they tried to do with him in the brief Flashpoint period.
Yes, very true.
They had that version where he was actually picked up by the government in the first place, and I think that
Snyder wrote by the government, which is interesting.
Yeah, and so I think that this is kind of like bridging the gap between those two ideas, kind of splitting the middle there. But no, you're right. That guy is after Superman for some reason. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. I don't know if he's Kryptonian. I don't know what he is.
Yeah, I'm still kind of hoping that he's the New 52 version of Energy Superman, so we can kind of forget that ever happened to Superman himself, and he can be his own character.
I really don't think they're ever going to make any kind of a connection to that, but...
Hey, I don't know.
He's not made of pure energy, though.
It's a New 52 version. I mean, like... None of the characters are themselves a lot of the time. You know?
Well, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. That might be what they were thinking, but I'm just saying the Energy Superman was still Superman, so...
Yeah, but they can retcon it. They can do whatever they want now.
Yeah, no, that's true. I have no idea. It'll be interesting to see if that ends up being something that's based on anything, or if it's just a new made-up thing from Snyder. But knowing Snyder does like to make up his own stuff, so I think it's more likely that he's just, like the Court of Owls, that he's just making up something new. Well, let's go to Marvel, shall we? And jump into Uncanny X-Men number 8, where we finally get some discussion from some really involved, intricate, interesting discussion between Cyclops and Magneto. And by the way, this being Bendis, I can't do anything but open up one of these saying, so here's the discussion that happens. So we've got Magneto and Cyclops finally talking about the fact that their powers aren't working right, and that and also Magneto's helping out Shield to go after Cyclops, but then of course he claims that he was just doing that, to actually help out Cyclops. But is it a double cross? Is it a triple double cross? What is it?
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff. And I really like that Magneto really levels with them and says, Cyclops, I am on your side because we both want the same things, but as far as what we want for the mutant race, but I will never forgive you for what you did to Professor X and to and the way you've split everybody off and everything. And I'm glad that we finally got that confrontation. That needed to happen.
I like that too, and I like that Cyclops is strong enough now to not let Magneto keep him down about that either. Like, not that he should necessarily be happy about the fact that he killed Charles Xavier. That's fine. He can brood about it, in his own spare time, where I'm not reading that off panel. But I like that Cyclops sort of addresses an interesting contradiction that I've always found with Magneto's character, where he was a prisoner of the Holocaust of the Nazis, of this regime that practiced racial superiority, and Magneto has the same ideas about mutants, and he talks all the time about how the humans mistreated his people and all that sort of thing. It's an interesting contradiction, and Cyclops sort of points it out. He's like, well, you're talking about these people that'll do anything to keep their power, and you're kind of the same guy. Why should I trust you over them? And just because you have similar ideas to me, you're still kind of a bad person. I liked that they both address the skeletons they have in each other's closets, you know what I mean? It's just an interesting parallel between the two characters. Like, Cyclops is almost leveling with Magneto, but in a way that's, they're both sort of addressing the flaws and problems they have with each other.
Yeah, it's a really sophisticated way of showing that these two people are at the core still who they always have been, even though they have evolved like people do.
Exactly. I loved the little part at the beginning where Cyclops is talking to that Goldballs kid, where they drop him off at his house, and he's like, just be a good person, you're a mutant and all that stuff. It's just like, that's Scott Summers,
just exactly.
Goodwill towards everybody, even though he kind of fell off his rocker down in AVX, he's still, that same altruistic person. He wants to help people at his core. I really liked that.
Yeah, especially because he's surprised that they allow him to go home, because these kids have this idea in their heads that and Cyclops, I think, gives off this vibe accidentally that the X-Men are all about, if you're a mutant, you must fight in this war, and you must go against humanity and help, and if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. That's not really how Cyclops operates, but he's also leading a revolution, so he comes off that way.
Right, and the thing about it is, too, like, I loved how political this book got in returning to that sort of political intrigue that it had set up with the first, like, couple issues of the book, and as much as I liked the little sidetrack we took into the Dark Dimension, or Limbo, with Dormammu and Doctor Strange and all that stuff, that was cool. But I like that we're getting back to the political stuff, and it almost seems like we're setting up a status quo for the mutants here that's similar to the one that they had all the way back in the 60s, where they're being, this police brutality. We address that kind of stuff here. We're talking about the powers that be abusing their power and subjugating minority groups of people. Like, this is going all the way back to, like, 60s civil rights stuff, and I really like that about it.
And it's also really smart that, we've talked a lot about how these books are, especially Bendis's books, are all complementing each other. It's also really cool that Bendis used this opportunity with bringing the original 5 X-Men to the present to have some of that civil rights stuff going on that they would have been dealing with in that time period, even though they have to kind of skip over it and not come right out and say that they're from the 60s, because that doesn't really work. But I was reminded of that when Angel comes out and says, "Hey everybody, don't forget, from my perspective, I've only been doing this for 3 weeks, and all I know," I love this line, "the only thing I know how to do is fly. I can do that. I don't know how to do anything else."
I thought that was hilarious, too, yeah. I liked the scene, too, where that guy that got shot woke up and Angel's sort of standing over him, and he's like, oh, am I in heaven? I thought that was really funny, too.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That is funny.
That whole exchange with Angel I thought was really funny, because he's like the odd man out of all the X-Men characters here. Like, he's the at least a little bit optimistic one, I don't know. I really like the way Bendis is playing all these characters off of each other. It's completely fascinating. And I hear a lot of people say that they're a little too talky, but, like, in reality, most of the time, what are people doing when they're together is talking with each other. I feel like this is a realistic kind of book, you know what I mean? I feel like that's what these people would be doing.
It would be a problem.
Fighting physically all the time.
It would be a problem if there was no story being told, but that's not the case. Yeah. If it was just people sitting on a couch, kind of philosophizing constantly. And people that take issue with Bendis having characters too often discussing the kind of more broad overview kinds of problems as opposed to having those discussions within a context, that's fair, but I don't think he does it too much for my taste. Because of the sorts of things of the sorts of things that are going on, I think that you would have places where a couple of characters might sit down and say, okay, what are the greater implications of all of this? But I'm glad he doesn't go there too often. There still is plenty of story being told. I'm glad that the Gold Balls guy isn't completely gone. I kind of thought they were going to write him out of the book, and then they don't, and so that was nice. Because I like that kid. He was my favorite of the new guys, and I was like, oh, they're getting rid of him. And then Bendis actually uses him going home for a really good plot thing, and I'm glad that that's there.
And you made a good point about one of the people eventually pointing out maybe the greater implications of this, and Bendis knows these characters so well. It's a credit to him that he chooses Magneto to be the guy to do that, because that's who Magneto is, dude. Like, he's the guy that's planning, looking at the broader implications of every action that this group is doing. Like, that's totally in character for him, Like, if Emma Frost were to come out and say stuff like that, that would be in character too, but, you don't want to have someone like, Gold Balls coming out and be like, what are the logic and implications of political, that wouldn't make sense. It makes sense that someone like Magneto would do that. So, I don't really have any problems with it. I really enjoyed the issue.
Let's move on to Daredevil, number 28. So, I know that we always say how much we like this book. I think it's important to mention that we have finally kind of finished the big, giant, overarching plot that had been going on for 27 issues, and that we're now on to kind of a new chapter of this. And this is one of the best issues of this book.
It's so...
This is amazing. Go ahead, Dan.
I loved everything about this. This is just basically Matt Murdock going back to his childhood and dealing with one of the bullies, one of the people, actually the person that gave him the name Daredevil, all the way back to his origin. The kids used to call him Daredevil when he would say, "No, I have to go study," and they'd beat him up and stuff. And we have this situation viewed from two entirely different perspectives, and Matt Murdock sort of gets his comeuppance a little bit, where he's not sure if his behavior as a child was pretentious or not, and that's why he was picked on by people, and that's a really interesting idea.
Boy, what a mature way to tell this story, right? Wouldn't it have been really easy for Wade? This is why I love Wade as a storyteller. He's going to give you both sides of something like this. He's not going to have this bully just show up so that we, the reader, can go, "Oh yeah, now Daredevil gets to beat up on this bully." You know, it's not that.
Yeah. He's different than Flash Thompson, which I really appreciated. This kid easily could have just been Flash, you know, the stereotypical bully that had a bad home life. That's why he was the bully, and now he's an alcoholic that needs help from Matt Murdock. That's totally who this guy could have been, and he's not, and you're right, I appreciate that a lot.
It could have been really easy also for them to just be kind of buddy-buddy, and these guys are never going to see eye to eye, and I like those stories sometimes where, like, you have a bully, and I personally have had this experience where there was somebody in high school that kind of picked on me a little bit, then we got older, and we met each other again, and we discovered that we were a lot more alike than we were different, and all that stuff from the past just kind of fell away. That can happen. That can happen. Like we kind of just let bygones be bygones. Me and this kid, and but here.
Yeah, that's what happened with Peter Parker and Flash Thompson as well.
Yes, but here this guy is just different from that because, importantly, Flash Thompson grew up. I'm glad you brought up Flash. I was going to do that too. Flash, importantly, grows up and makes something of his life and feels bad about how he treated people when he was a kid, and that was a major turning point for him. And learning how to be a better person and how to better himself. This guy doesn't do that, and he's. So yeah, exactly. He plays the victim. So when he grows up, he's still that same kid. He's still that same guy he was when he was a kid, and that's why he's fallen into the wrong crowds and why he needs Matt Murdock's help now as a lawyer. So yeah, that's
yeah. And
that's
sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that's good and real. I buy his psychology, the way it's set up.
Yeah, me too. And I love the parallel he makes between the two in that way. You just made me think of this, where like. Matt Murdock, when that guy walks into the room, Matt Murdock's completely disgusted by him just by the way he smells, and that's, as a kind of person, like, that's an upper-class kind of judgment, pretentious thing to do, right?
Yeah.
And it goes all the way back to when he was a kid. Matt Murdock, in a sense, is still the same kid he was, just like this guy is, and that's really why they don't see eye to eye. And that's a really interesting way to connect them. Wade just... He knows these characters so well.
Yeah, and he's really good at playing Matt Murdock as not a perfect person and not 100% noble, and he's done that since the beginning of his run. That last arc, even in how it ends, we talked about last time. A lot of that is about Matt Murdock's arrogance.
Yeah, it is, and it's an interesting contradiction as well, and this character as a whole is an interesting contradiction. Lawyer, vigilante, Catholic, he's got this weird contradiction thing going on, where you have him being pretentious and stuff like that with this guy, and then we see him like throw up from smelling the chemicals that they've been pumping to Foggy's body, and as soon as Foggy needs him, he goes to his side, despite all of that stuff, you know? So we see flashes of good within him too, and it's up to the reader to decide if he's ultimately a good man. I like that a lot about it. It gives the reader a lot of credit. He's not holding our hands and saying, "Oh, Daredevil's the good guy. He's going to win because his name's on the cover of the book." It's really interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean there are everybody has dimension to them. There are more. Exactly. There's more than one. Very often, more than two sides to all people. And we've seen that with every major player in this book, because Foggy Nelson is that way too. He wasn't he has not been perfectly correct about everything that he said or thought, or judgment calls he's made about Matt Murdock as this has gone along, and it's just like everybody in this feels like a real person, and that's rare in fiction. That's rare in modern fiction. And I'm just really glad to see that here.
Yeah, I love that he always plays Foggy as the type of person, and I've known someone like this in my life too, where they're insecure about themselves a little bit, and then Foggy's got that going on where they're very quick to judge the people that are around them, like their friends, and get a little paranoid, or maybe they don't like me as much as I thought they did. You know what I mean? He's that guy. And the fact that we can talk about the intricacies of their personalities is such a credit to what Wade's done with this.
Yeah.
Not that Foggy and Matt haven't been three-dimensional characters before, of course, but this is they're in their best form in a while, to say the least.
And Wade is very intelligent in not jumping right into another giant mystery plot. I like that this is a more that this is kind of a smaller, more street level, not street level, but like just more pulled back, toned down, personal kind of story, and yet very much related to the things that this book has been about. Not related much to the story from last issue and prior, but like going back to the beginnings, the roots of this character. Not adding to origin. I like that he doesn't do that. I like that he's not like throwing random things to make that more complicated and convoluted. A bully who called Matt Murdock Daredevil, I want to say that's pre-existing.
Oh yeah, that was from issue 1 that was going on, like back in '64.
Yeah, so I mean, like he's not adding things; he's adding dimension to things.
He added one thing, which was I think the bully being the cause for Matt wandering out into the street and seeing the old man. That's, I think, the one thing that was added here.
But that doesn't make it convoluted. That just
doesn't make it convoluted. I'm just saying that's one thing added, and I was going to say
you're right. That just gives you a detail you didn't have before. Well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So just very intelligently done, I have to say. And the artist on here is not Somni. It was Javier Rodriguez, and I thought he did a great job.
Yeah.
I thought he was.
It was a good stand-in. I thought it looked a lot like Somni.
Yeah, he did. The panel layouts are very similar. It's very traditional, but in a good way. Dynamic and traditional in a good way. It's sort of like how like Dave Gibbons does the Watchmen 8-panel grid. It's not the same thing, but it's the same sort of idea, you know.
Well, I think even though the lines are somewhat mimicked too, certainly the color scheme is the same.
Yes, for sure. And I think the artist on this is actually the colorist as well, too. Yes, he was. So that's just a credit to this guy's artwork. He's able to match the tone so well.
Well, Dan, we've got one more book to do together. Yeah, this was fantastic. Everybody read that. Oh, also, great jumping on point. If you've not been reading this, wonderful jumping on point.
Very good point.
If you've been hearing us forever and ever, Dan and I, the last 2 years have been touting this up. If you've not been reading this and you've been like, well, it's too involved, it's too far away, great jumping on point. This is a good place to start. Now, we move on to Ninja Turtles New Animated Adventures #1. This is a book that Dan and I had both discussed, maybe trying out after we read the Free Comic Book Day issue, and I was still a little bit on the fence because this wasn't Burnham. I was hoping Burnham would get this book, and he didn't. And then I opened it up and I looked at the artwork, and I liked it, and I love reading stuff for kids. I don't mind admitting that. Stuff that's written for kids that's really good. I enjoy that because I don't get it all the time. And
there's not enough all ages books.
There's not.
I agree.
And of course, most of the books I was reading when I was a kid were closer to all ages, or things that didn't have such dark stuff that kids couldn't read, and so I just missed that a little bit. So when it's really good, I like to get it. And right. Dan, I was impressed with this.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. Donatello being almost like the main character of the story, helped that quite a bit, I think.
It did.
He's my favorite turtle.
I've not been watching this series. We've talked about this since the first couple issues.
I haven't been really keeping up with it either. I've seen a few episodes here and there, and I've liked what I've seen, but I haven't watched it all the way through.
I am digging on this characterization for April, and didn't think I would before the show started, and I heard that they were going to kind of make her the 5th turtle. That's working. I like the idea of her training with Master Splinter and having to learn the art of ninjutsu, the art of invisibility, and being kind of like some of the turtles are, a little bit not quite level-headed enough, a little brash, a little arrogant, a little full of herself. And so by the end of this, like, she goes on a mission that she's probably not ready for. And by the end, it's a good lesson. Learns both her strengths and her weaknesses, and it's great.
Yeah, I loved that it was really a character arc for April, and it starts and is resolved in one issue. I liked that quite a bit. How often do we get character arcs that begin and end in the same issue?
And are effective
now.
Yeah, effective. Like, this feels like an episode of the, like, what I really, really like about this is that this could have been an episode of that show.
It could have been. I love the characterization for most of the Turtles, too. Like, how Donatello's written in here is pretty... I mean, obviously it's a little hammed up because it's for kids and they want to... Let's throw some jokes in there, but I thought, for the most part, Donatello's written pretty realistically and having, because they're a little bit younger in here. I think they're supposed to be like 13, that awkward young love crushing on a girl kind of thing. You both know that you like each other, but nobody really wants to admit it because it'd be awkward. And that tension between the two of them, it's real and you can feel it in the dialogue, I really liked that about it. Their relationship is much more interesting than I thought it would be, because when I heard that they were going to try to do that, I was like, that's weird for a whole lot of reasons.
Yeah, but it actually was interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a good dynamic. Yeah. I had been wondering since the beginning why in the world she had a 5 on her shirt, and I just realized it. It's because she's supposed to be the 5th turtle, so they put a 5 on her shirt.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that, to be honest. That's funny.
And also in the cartoon show, remind me, in the 80s cartoon show, was it Channel 5 or Channel 6 News that she worked for?
I think it was Channel 5.
That makes it a double entendre. It's a 5 as an homage to Channel 5 News, but she's also the 5th turtle.
That's awesome.
That must be what it is. Yeah. But yeah, no, so this is cool. This is basically Donatello and April go to a, federal junkyard, and Donatello wants a piece of machinery to build something. We don't know what it is yet. We find out what it is at the end, and it's something completely mundane and random, and I like that. And, basically, April gets caught, and they have to save her. And, it's a standard kind of cartoon plot, but a lot of good character things are done with it, and I think it's readable. It's an all-ages book. It's not just for kids. It's readable by anybody. I thought it was great.
Right, yeah, I mean, by no means is this the book I would buy if you were an adult reader over the main book. I think the main book is just, because it's not tied to the cartoon show, they can do more things with their plotting and all that sort of thing. But I think this had a great sort of character arc for kids that's not too preachy, where it's like, a lot of kids that I've seen, it's a realistic thing to want to have to take on more responsibility than you're ready for, and trying to leave the nest a little bit too early, and that tension between you and your parents when you're getting around this age. Because that's something I've experienced recently in my life, not all that recently, but as a teenager, that's something you go through where you're like, you want to have more freedom, your parents want to pull back a little bit because they're worried about you, and finding that happy medium between the two of them, it can be difficult sometimes. And I like that that's where this is sort of headed. Very good stuff.
I'll also say that I probably enjoyed this a little more just because I've been in such a Turtles mood, because the IDW Turtle series has been so good, and this is not an extension of that, but it's of that quality for what this has to be in order to be of the tone of that series. It's definitely up to that kind of quality. So yeah, I highly recommend this to anybody that likes that show or has kids. I'll definitely buy this for my kid. I think it's quite good.
I think I might actually keep on this. I think this was pretty good, and
I'm thinking about it too.
I just wanted to give it a shot because IDW seems like they know exactly what they're doing with this franchise. They get it. They understand why people like it, and I figured this would be a little bit more in the style of the 80s cartoon, which the show was a little bit, not the same thing, but it definitely had brought back a little bit of the humor, just the stories are a little bit better. And yeah, that's exactly what I got, so I was satisfied. I liked it quite a bit.
Do you think that when the Michael Bay movie comes out, that they'll do a tie-in for that?
I hope not. Because this can be like the fun thing, the IDW series can be like, the really great thing, and then the Michael Bay thing can be the stupid thing that I don't bother with.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if they do that. I kind of think they might.
Yeah. They probably will, because they've been doing it for all of the movie.
They're doing it Star Trek.
They did it for. I feel like there's another movie license they have. I can't remember off the top of my head. But,
by the way, did you hear the announcement for the Con Mini?
No, what's that?
Yeah, they're doing, just like they did with Nero, they're doing a Khan mini in the new continuity, except that it's going to be a prequel that's like the eugenics wars leading up to Khan being with the Admiral guy.
That sounds cool.
Or it could be terrible, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, it could go either way.
Yeah, like, the setting, the premise of that being in the eugenics sounds really cool. But then again, we're going to have to deal with Khan as he is in that movie, where he's not a good dictator. He just kills people all the time. So,
yeah, so what's that going to be like? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine he'll be a...
That starts in October. I plan to review it. Maybe Dan will review it with me too. I don't know, but
yeah, I might flip over to the store. We'll see if there's a lot of books that week or whatever.
Dan, let's go on to our solo stuff. Go ahead.
The first book I had was Indestructible Hulk #10 with another beautiful Paulo Rivera cover. I just love this one. Similar to his Daredevil #1 cover, where covering the eyes with a billy club. That's just a really cool image to me. And this brought things into a really interesting place, where this is similar to Wade's run on Daredevil, where the first year of this book you thought it was just fun one and done little kind of issues, and you figure out here he's building towards this big ongoing story, and it's really interesting, where we have the Hulk and Banner finally confronting that relationship they have with S.H.I.E.L.D. We had found out in the previous issue that the reason Matt Murdock was around was because Bruce Banner hired him as a lawyer, and he's sort of his failsafe. If S.H.I.E.L.D. tries to do anything to him, he's given Matt Murdock confidential information on S.H.I.E.L.D. that he will leak to the public, and the U.S. government will fall to its knees. Essentially, that's what Banner says. So he has everything planned out. S.H.I.E.L.D. is planning things against him to prevent him from doing those types of things. So it's this almost like cold escalation war just between S.H.I.E.L.D. as an organization as Bruce Banner. It's really interesting stuff. And we have some fun action here involving Baron Zemo trying to get this sonic weapon that Daredevil and the Hulk have to go up against. And, of course, that's Daredevil's big weakness is loud sounds. So that's been really difficult for them to fight together. It's just really fun, once again, seeing these two characters play off of each other. Wade created a dynamic between two characters I never would have thought would be any fun at all, but they have a lot of things in common. It's really interesting seeing them fight against each other and with each other. It's just really great characterization stuff. And it's sort of the opposite of the Bendis style, where we have... This issue is essentially almost one giant action scene, but we have some great dialogue happening mid-fight in the style of, the old Marvel stuff where everyone's talking while they're fighting, and it doesn't come off as, overwritten or goofy or anything. It works really well. Wade pulls it off in great style, so I really like this one. In the next issue, it says Hulk, Agent of Time, and then there's a bunch of, dinosaurs and Revolutionary War crap going on in the next cover, so that sounds cool. I'm really excited for this book. It's really great stuff. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm going to have to go back to that retroactively, aren't I, Dan?
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. It's good stuff.
I wasn't reading it just because, I'm not a big Hulk guy. I read the first issue. I was like, it's good, but it's Hulk.
Yeah,
and then
I can
he had to freaking bring Daredevil into the mix, and he had to do that whole Simonson Thor thing, which I also want to read. Grr!
Oh, so good.
I'm so mad at Marvel for taking all my money. Quit being so good all the time. So, not speaking of that, it's now time to go on to Justice League number 22. And I'm kidding. This is the beginning of Trinity War. Boy, I bash on DC too much. I'm sorry. This is not bad. I enjoyed this a lot. I am not 100% sure what all is going on because I've not been reading the Justice League books. And I do feel like with the first issue of this being an event, I kind of expected that it would do more legwork to help get me in the world and knowing what's going on, up to speed. But it really doesn't do that. It kind of just throws you right in. And unfortunately, I've not been reading the Justice League books lately, so I felt like I was playing catch up really hard on this. To be fair, this at least is an event being done through the books and not its own miniseries, so I can't begrudge it too much for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am still really baffled that Trinity War being set up for as long as it has been. I mean, like, last Free Comic Book Day, not the last, but the one before it, 2012, did a book setting Trinity War up. Now it's here, and it's not being touted up nearly as hard as it had been before, or as I thought it was going to be. I mean, like, it says Trinity War on the cover, but it's not at the top like you would expect it to be. I haven't been seeing a lot of...
The event's got a whole cover treatment and all that sort of
thing. I mean, okay, so they've certainly been soliciting it in DC's books lately and giving you ads for it, but I guess it just doesn't seem everywhere like I would have expected it to be. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Age of Ultron was more everywhere than this has been.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And so I'm a little surprised by that. So I don't know. This is finally bringing back the whole Pandora thing from the first arc of Justice League. Jeff Johns has been seeding this since the beginning. We got a lot of hints in the first arc of Justice League that I'm glad I read that Pandora had something to do maybe with the with creating the New 52 universe in the first place, or at least that's how I interpreted it. This seems to be a lot more about Pandora messing up humanity in the first place at the beginning of antiquity, because this is not a character named Pandora based on the Greek mythology Pandora. This is the Greek myth Pandora, just like all of the other Greek myth characters that we've had in Wonder Woman. She's basically a Wonder Woman character. And so, what DC's been doing lately, it's interesting. I've not read any of the Wonder Woman books, so I'm just saying this based on things I've heard. It seems like they've basically just taken most of Greek mythology, thrown it in the DC universe, and tried to blend it with everything else, and said, this is how, kind of like Norse and Marvel.
Yeah, it sounds like they're trying to make her into the DC version of Thor. Like in the first arc of Justice League, she even had that thing like Thor walking around in the small town in the movie where she's like, ice cream, yes, another, I love this, you know?
Yeah, but it was better than that. That was one of my favorite scenes in that series. Don't knock it. That scene was great. Whatever. Anyway,
it's reminding me of Thor quite a bit.
Yeah, now that you say that, you're right. But I still liked that scene a lot. Anyway, but yeah. So Pandora claims here that she was duped, like in the Greek myth, to open the box that released the 7 deadly sins. And that is the reason that humanity has the ability to have evil, to do evil things and be bad. And Superman doesn't buy it, of course, because he's Superman and he has more traditional American values and more and based a lot on more Judeo-Christian kinds of things, clearly. And not saying that Superman is necessarily like a Christian. Have we ever seen anything where Superman goes to church? I'm not sure I've ever seen, besides Man of Steel. Because I guess he goes to church in Man of Steel. But anyway, so he's like, well, no, Pandora. That's not the reason that there is sin in humanity. And so you got the conflict here of obviously, and you would expect that with this arc, really, of fate versus free will. And I don't know where all that is ultimately going, because I'm not real sure how you could have both. I'm not real sure how you could have a box that you open that let all of sin out, but then that's not what causes mankind to have to do bad things. I don't know how you have both.
Plus, there's that whole emotional spectrum thing with the Lantern Corps that Johns did, and like Brightest Day and the Guardians of the White Lantern, and them being the Guardians of the Planet or something like that. I thought that was connected to human emotion and all that sort of thing too. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think they'll bring all of that crap in, and hopefully not.
No, I don't think they will either. So basically, you have a war between two Justice Leagues, which is reminding me quite a bit of Avengers versus X-Men, naturally. Although
it's war, and all of those Marvel events where the superheroes fight each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's two teams of good guys fighting each other. Obviously, the catalysts are very, very different, because it basically seems like the Justice League of America was kind of initially set up, though most of the heroes on the team don't know it, but of course Amanda Waller does, because she seems to be kind of manipulating things behind the scenes, that the original, or that the Justice League of America was kind of set up to be a foil for the Justice League and to take them out if that ever became necessary, or or maybe that's what they were intended to do from the very beginning, because what happens in this book, or in this first issue of Trinity War, is Superman is set up to take a fall to look like he murdered someone. I won't say who, and there's the big excuse made to force this war to happen in the first place. So there's a lot of politics going on. It's a lot of basically people still don't trust Superman, and how can we kind of get rid of Superman and get rid of the Justice League because we don't trust them, they're too powerful. So the government basically create, whether it's one person or a collective, it's kind of difficult to tell how exactly this is mastermind, but basically let's put together another team of superheroes to kind of supplant the one that we don't trust and that we're not sure about and that we're afraid is taking all of our power away. So it's definitely a big power struggle. It's interesting, but...
That sounds interesting. It reminds me a little bit of the Throne of Atlantis thing that I liked a lot, that crossover between Justice League and Aquaman.
I think he's definitely playing with a lot of the same ideas as he's playing with there. But the difficulty I'm having with it so far is just all of the mythology stuff and how that fits in.
That's cool.
Because we've got Pandora wanting to kind of close the box back up and fix humanity, I guess, on top of the government is forcing this war between Justice Leagues. I don't know how those two things are going to fit together quite yet. But anyway, clearly I would have a better understanding of what's going on with this book if I had been reading the Justice League books. I do plan on continuing on this, especially because the art is really, really beautiful. I've always liked Ivan Reis, and he's doing some great stuff.
Ivan Reis is fantastic.
He's doing some great stuff here.
That's awesome.
And it's really, really pretty. I don't know if he's drawing... I assume they probably have different artists for the different books since they're crossing.
I would think so, yeah. Is David Finch still on the Justice League of America book?
If he is, I don't know, but if he is, that's the next guy besides Ivan Reis I'd like to see on this, because I love David Finch. But anyway, there's also a lot of stuff going on with Shazam here to really like how he draws Shazam. That's
Shazam's in there finally? And I heard they were going to put him on the team after they finished the origin story for him in the backup.
He's not on a team. He actually, this is kind of cool. He actually goes to, because he's playing with these themes of the gray, of naturally the gray in between good and evil, as you expect, and with the whole government versus superheroes thing. And so you have Shazam, who apparently in a fight with Black Adam was killed. I didn't realize that. And he actually is taking Black Adam's ashes. He's been cremated, and he's taking Black Adam's ashes to go bury him. And the place that he goes to bury him is where the beginning of this war starts. And so he ends up having a big knockout brawl with Superman in the middle of this, which is always cool to see.
Oh yeah, that's what you want to see.
So yeah, if nothing else, it's worth reading for the action. It's worth reading for the artwork, and there are definitely some intriguing notions. Although it's kind of typical for modern superhero fare.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I'm probably not going to buy it in issues just because I'm not as invested in DC enough as a cohesive universe to be interested in reading all of their events necessarily. But if you end up saying that continues to be great, that's something that I might check out when they put out a collection of it, because the concept of the whole thing sounds really interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's very consistent with the nature of the beginning of Justice League of America, and I'm less annoyed with the roster of those characters knowing that, because that's a team that would not have naturally formed. Someone would have to cherry pick that, and that's why you would have some morally ambiguous people on that team too. It makes a lot of sense. Like Catwoman on that team suddenly makes a great deal more sense now.
Yeah, and hopefully the end result of this, when everyone's done fighting, is Martian Manhunter's on the main team.
And I should also mention, I'm sorry about talking about this for so long, but it's kind of the big thing that came out this week. I also should mention, now that I'm thinking about it, I think that the Justice League of America really was probably set up completely to battle the Justice League, because a lot of those characters are definitely foils for other people on the other team, and the Justice League of America gets in this, they get their assignments of what character each of them is, or what person each of them is supposed to fight from the Justice League, and Catwoman gets Batman. So she clearly was put on that team, or it seems like anyway, unless I'm reading too far into it, it seems like she was put on that team to take out Batman. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting, and they would know the personal connection between the two of them too. I like that.
Yeah, but then at the same time, they're also worried about Catwoman being too connected to Batman. So I'm not sure how exactly that's all going, but it's just the first issue of it, so I'm definitely going to keep on it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Great to hear that we have 3 books from DC this week that we have good things to say about. I like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, 2 of them are Snyder, but yeah. There's a part of me that really wishes I had kept on Justice League this whole time, because every time I've happened to pick up an issue of it, I've liked it.
I really want to get the collection of the Shazam back up, because what I read of that I loved. I thought it was fantastic.
Oh really? I didn't read any of that.
Yeah, I thought it was great. So when they put that out as a collection where I can have the whole thing and don't have to have, all the Justice League stories, not that I wouldn't want to read those, but it's just that's what I'm a little bit more interested in.
Yeah.
That stuff I'm really interested in. So anyway, the next book I have is a Hawkeye number 12. This is by Fraction, and Francesco Francavilla came back to do another issue.
Yay!
The guy that did Black Mirror, some of that stuff with Gordon. And man, was this a really interesting issue. I feel like this book is starting to meander a little bit in not having Clint Barton as the main character of the book, but I have to say that it's interesting. This is all about Barney Barton, who is Clint Barton's brother. I wasn't really too aware of Barney Barton. I knew he existed, I just didn't know too much about his character. But this goes all the way back to the past between the two of them and examining their family life and how that informed who they are today. We have this really interesting parallel with the two characters where Hawkeye, Clint Barton, and also Barney both inherit different aspects of their father's personality, and their father was this drunken jerk bastard guy that doesn't really give a damn about anybody. And they both come together because, they're close brothers because they have to deal with that going on every day, and their mom getting beaten in front of them, all that sort of thing. It's a really bad home life. And they come together because of that, and Clint sort of inherits the aspect of his father's personality where he's very distant with people and holds grudges. Like, this isn't a spoiler because it's Hawkeye's origin, I believe this has been told before. Like, their parents die in a car crash, and Clint's reaction is good. I didn't really have anything a positive relationship with those people anyway. And Barney is sad about that, but later on we see that instead of making something with his life, like Clint did, Barney is a homeless guy, he's a drunk, he begs for change, like, he's the path, he takes the path that his father took in life instead of taking that aspect of his personality that Clint has, where he just doesn't really care about people all that much.
He hangs out with Morbius.
Oh, that would be cool. Morbius would do something. But anyway, I liked all of that parallel stuff, and we get some really touching scenes. We have, like, Barney, who's the older brother, teaching Clint to fight and sort of being a father figure for him, and at the end, they come through for each other, and, they have that moment where they meet, and Clint brings them inside from being homeless, and they hug, and it's really nice. It's a touching issue. It's a well-crafted issue. It's well done. I just wish that Fraction would get back to the story he was setting up a little bit before, because we had this really interesting villain that popped up and killed one of Clint's, one of the people that was living in his apartment building, and that, for 2 issues now, we've sidetracked a little bit. Maybe, that's sort of an invalid complaint because it's only been 2 issues, and when this gets collected in trade, which that's what it's intended to do anyway, it won't feel like that. But month to month, I'm just feeling like I'm buying a Hawkeye book and he's not in it. It's just a little strange.
Would you say that overall that book has been lacking framework, or was there enough before those 2 issues?
It's sort of like the Mark Waid thing, where he gives you the illusion of it not being one big ongoing story, and then it is. Like, he'll pull little things. It's that sort of style of storytelling. So I'm not saying that this won't factor in the future and be important, and not that it's... And it's important to someone who doesn't know Hawkeye to understanding who the character is. Like, all of that stuff works well. I just wish we'd get back to telling the story that I was interested in before, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I was really interested in what he was doing before, and now we're sidetracking a little bit, but, you know, hopefully it all comes together and is awesome in the future. And I can't complain. We get some more tracksuit mafia guys that say bro every 3 words, so I was laughing. that was fun. But yeah, I still recommend Hawkeye. It's a good book.
They always remind me of the Aztecs in the Tick that say Itlon.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll show you that episode at some point. It's pretty great. There's these guys that just pretend like they're Aztecs, but they're really just a grown-up high school baseball team, and called the Aztecs. And they go around and every 3 words they say Itlon, and it doesn't mean anything. And at one point, one of them says, "I now decree that we all stop saying Itlon all the time." So then they just quit saying Itlon finally, because they kind of own the fact that they're just a baseball team that works out of old Aztec ruins and pretends like they're actually Aztecs.
That's awesome.
Let's move on to my last solo book, Batman Arkham Unhinged, number 16, an issue that I have very, very little to say about. This is by a new author, Karen Travis, and she is apparently... What's that?
I think I've heard of her before. I can't remember.
This claims she's a best-selling author. I don't know what of. I should have looked that up, but I didn't. This is also drawn by Riccardo Bercielli, who I'm not familiar with, and whose art I really did not care for. Way too many lines on people's faces. Like there are places where Batman just looks like he's scrunching up his mouth too hard, or possibly eating a lot of marshmallows. It's hard to tell. But anyway,
that's really strange.
This is the beginning. It claims of a new storyline, and there's to be continued at the end. I'm not sure we've ever had that in this book. This is usually one-shot stories set in the Arkhamverse, sometimes before Arkham City, sometimes during it. This is during Arkham City, but has nothing to do with it, really, except for a couple mentions of things about it. I mean, Mayor Sharp figures in slightly, and the Tigers fit in slightly. Otherwise, it reads like a mid to late 80s Batman detective story. That's basically what it is. And it's not bad.
Like that kind of book.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's just not what I expect for this title. It's like they kind of ran out of Arkham stuff, so now they're just doing other things. And I need to go back and check, because I don't know if this book is still digital first, if they haven't run out of the digital first stuff yet and they're still collecting this in singles and that's what it still is, or if they've caught up and now they're publishing new stuff and maybe eventually it will get into Arkham Origins. I kind of wonder if maybe they'll go there. You asked me last time I talked about this book if I thought they'd go there, and I didn't. Except now I'm not sure if it's still digital first. I gotta go look it up, because it sort of feels like they're maybe out of Arkham stuff to do. Unless this is just kind of an interlude thing and they're gonna go back to it. Because I really like the guy that was writing this and I want more stories from him. But anyway...
Friedhoffs, right?
Thank you. Yes, Derek Friedhoffs, and I really like the guy, and I want to see him back on this book if this book is going to continue. I would be fine with this going on for as long as they want to produce it, because it's not the 52 universe, so it's more traditional Batman, and it's set in the Arkhamverse, which has plenty of things that you can mess with. So if they want to occasionally do a story like this that feels like just a random Batman story, and they're going to keep this book going, that's awesome to me. But I don't want this if the book's almost done, is all I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they canceled it and relaunched it as another book when Origins, because they can get a new number one, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which would be unfortunate, but...
It would. I would like to see this continue on. Anyway, about the book itself, this introduces a new villain, as far as I know, somebody that I've never heard of before, a guy named the Bookbinder. And what he does is he kidnaps this really popular television personality and is mad at him because this guy doesn't have a real skill set That's why he's mad at him. He's famous for being famous, and the bookbinder is this intellectual that leaves clues that leaves clues in the form of a note that are variations on famous literary quotes. That Batman conveniently apparently has read everything and always knows what the quote is and what words the guy has changed. And so, what's that?
Wow.
You know, naturally. Again, this is mid-'80s Batman. I mean, that was Batman, you know? Or even late 70s Batman, you know? And so, anyway, I think this is kind of a cool motive for this bad guy. It's kind of about the degeneration of culture and the degeneration of language and a special, which is something that I'm always on about. So, you know, preaching to the choir here, but it's not too preachy either. It's just this is a villain with a motivation, and that's what he's on about. And there's some social commentary embedded in it. I don't mean that it's too in your face. And anyway, so he talks. This bad guy talks a lot about how people are ignorant, and he gives this guy every opportunity to get out of this trap by answering trivia questions. And I think that's really fun. And it begins with recite from any poem, and I'll let you go. And the guy can't think of anything. And so then he's like, okay, what war or what major battle ended on this date in 1945? Nothing. And so finally, he says, okay, fine. He's like, he's got contingencies for this, and he's like, okay, I'll give you an IQ test where you don't have to remember any specific history or math or language, and so he's got to like match up symbols to get out, and that's kind of what the cliffhanger is. So Batman is in the background, trying to find this guy with all these clues that he's leaving. And that's basically what it is. So it's a good, fun story, yeah. Yeah, it's solid. It's not brilliant, but it's solid. Which has been kind of my verdict on this book overall anyway. It's not brilliant, but it's solid.
Yeah, it's always cool to see new Batman villains get created, because it seems like a lot of the time they'll keep mining the same ones over and over again. But you said it feels like a mid-'80s, like early '90s Batman book. That's sort of the Norm Brayfogle, Alan Grant era, where they were creating all those new villains, like the ventriloquist and all those kind of guys.
And it feels
that's
like
very cool.
And he feels like a Grant villain. You know, he's got like a grievance that's based in like present social turmoil, and so that's kind of par for the course for old Batman villains. It's kind of fun to see somebody go back to that. Yeah,
that is very cool. That's something that if there wasn't so many Batman books, I'd like to check out at some point.
I'd like to know what her influences were for that. But anyway, well, that is what we've got for you this week.
I got one more.
Dan, I'm sorry, I forgot. You've got one more. Sorry, Star Wars. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Star Wars number 7 by Brian Wood. We get a new artist this time. It's Ryan Kelly.
Any good?
Yeah, he's great. I really liked his stuff here. And this was probably my favorite issue of the series so far. This was great. We go with Luke and Leia back to Tatooine, and we go to the house that the stormtroopers killed Aunt Beru.
Aunt May.
I almost said it because they're so similar. And we go there, and Luke goes to their graves, and it's sort of ironically the same sort of theme that was addressed in the Ninja Turtles book this week, where we have Luke talking about how, I didn't really give them the time of day because I thought they were just trying to hold me down and not let me go. And, now I realize that the galaxy is such a scary place and, they were just worried about me. But the difference here is Luke doesn't get any closure for that. These people are dead. And it's really sad and really tragic for him. And I love that entire scene.
That is great.
It's great stuff, seeing him going back and addressing those sorts of things that we hadn't really seen done in the films. And we have Luke hatch this insane scheme to figure out who is the mole in the Rebel intelligence up at the top with Mon Mothma's council and stuff. by getting himself captured on an Imperial Star Destroyer and having Leia and friends come and save him. So it's sort of a reverse of the New Hope thing. It's really cool. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. There's this really interesting ongoing plot, too, with this newly appointed Grand Moff by Darth Vader. Looks like Vader scheming against the Emperor, scheming things behind his back, which is, sort of what Vader does. But there's this really interesting scene where she tries to kill herself for some reason, and we're not really sure why. And it's really interesting intrigue, espionage stuff, too. So I really like all that stuff about it. It continues to be great stuff. A great book. If you're a Star Wars fan, this is one of the ones you want to check out.
That is really smart to go back to the death of his aunt and uncle like that.
Yeah.
Because you're right that they really we talked about that when we did our commentary on it. They really were just looking out for the best for him, and he should feel bad about that.
Oh yeah, he does. He talks about like all the patience they had for him, where like he was very standoffish with them, especially, in New Hope, when you see him at the dinner table, and he's sort of like, why won't you let me leave? He's just kind of like whiny with them. And they have, the utmost patience and are trying to understand them, and, he feels awful about that. And it's great stuff to see a character go through like that. And
I'd like to see that go. I'd like to see that book, and I wonder if they'll do that. I'd like to see that book go beyond the point where he knows Darth Vader is his father, and revisit that and wonder if they knew.
I'd love to see that too. And eventually, I'd love to see this go up until Empire, and then skip Empire and tell stories in between there, and then, maybe go after Jedi, too.
Yeah.
If it goes on long enough, that would be really
Considering
cool.
we're getting 7, I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't planning that.
That's a very good point. Or at least another book set in between the episode 6 and 7. One of the other things I wanted to mention, too, was there's a preview back here for the Star Wars. The book based on George Lucas's original script, and it looks nothing like Star Wars.
It's like the Batman! Oh.
It looks sort of interesting. I don't know what to think of it, to be honest.
Are you going to read that?
I might check out the first issue or read it in the store or something, just out of curiosity. Just to see, because I've heard so many things about that original script, this is actually based off, they have the script and they're adapting it, so
right.
It would be interesting for me to see if they're able to turn that into anything interesting.
Dan, let's go ahead and do Book of the Week. What is your pick for this week, sir?
Well, this is going to be tough.
Yeah.
I don't want to pick Daredevil again. So let's see. I'm probably going to go with X-Men. I like this issue a lot. It goes back to the political stuff that I was really enjoying about this book, and a conversation between two of my favorite X-Men characters besides Nightcrawler, Cyclops and Magneto. So this was gold for me. I really enjoyed this one.
Well, fine, Dan. Then I'll do it happily. I'll pick Daredevil.
Nice.
For
Very
all
good
the
choice.
reasons we said. Yeah, what a great book. It was going to be between that and Batman this time. And
Batman I liked a lot.
How predictable are we? Dan and I were talking before the show, by the way, about Batman. We have no idea what this cover's about. We just don't understand it. What's going on in this cover? It's like this molten lava is being poured from a big stone bowl into what looks like a big round wooden circle. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, usually Capullo's pretty good with making a cover that tells you a little bit something about the story that's going on inside, and that one I don't know.
Well, it just makes me wonder if I'm just not smart enough to pick up on what the subtext is there, because I don't understand.
It's representative of the deterioration of Bruce and Alfred's relationship. Of course.
Somehow. Well, anyway, thanks everybody for watching New Acquisitions, and we'll have more comic reviews for you next week. I guess that's everything. So, thanks again to Elite Comics out here in Kansas City for helping us out with the show, and we'll see you again next time. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Dan.
And happy reading.